Hello, everyone. My name is Kirsten Hess, and I'm the owner of Let's Play Books Bookstore. And I also have founded the Lehigh Valley Book Festival, which did not take place, yay, last year, but we wanted it to. And so this year we're doing it virtually. And we have 36 authors and illustrators working with us over the course of 6 weeks. So every Friday night and every Saturday morning, we try to have a program that reaches a different audience. Today's session is called Women in Pictures. And if you see your screen, you can kind of see why. We have 4 fabulous ladies with wonderful picture books, all of which have backlist titles as well that are amazing. And we're hopefully going to be able to talk a little bit about those as well. Last night, we had a young adult session for young adult authors, but it was young adult readers and adult readers. So if you missed that session, I highly recommend you take a peek at our website in a little bit, because we will have the session up on a recording that you can watch. And these 4 authors were amazing. They were so real, so raw, so feisty, and really talked about young adult literature being literature, and that we really, if you're not already embracing it, you ought to take a peek. So I highly recommend watching that. And then next week, we have another middle grade session where we are featuring Gay Hollister, if you can see that, 7 Clues to Home. It's very, it's a quirky book, but it's clever, and we love clever. And then we have Michael Bagley, and he's coming for his second book of the Finn series. This is the first book, Finn and the Intergalactic Lunchbox. And then David Lubar will be here talking about Sleeping Freshmen Never Lie. So I hope you can join us for that as well. Now, while you're here, I am so very excited to showcase 4 women who have picture books that mean a lot to me. One of them hasn't even been released yet, and you guys are getting a sneak peek, but the other 3 just released this past month in March. So trying to have a picture book or any book released during a pandemic when bookstores and author events aren't really even happening is tough. But even when everything's in perfect condition, it can be tough. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves and talk briefly about their current book. And then after we go through each of the new books, we have a couple questions planned for them. And then if there's any audience questions, we'll hit those as well. And we'll wrap up right at 11 o'clock so that everybody, or 11 o'clock Eastern. Poor Jessica is coming to us from the West Coast, and it's really early there. So what I'll do now is ask all of our panelists to unmute themselves. And I promise, yeah, I know it always takes a little bit, right? I promise that I will say your name before or at the end of a question later on, so you're not just questioning who is that question to. So, but please know that this is very informal and casual. The attendees here are a mix from our regulars that come to Let's Play Books Bookstore, but also some soon to be published writers who are looking for information of how you got to be where you are. And we'll talk about all that a little bit later. So first up, I'm going to start with Reem, who has a new book that comes out in a week, April 13th, I think. Yay. So Reem, can you hold your book up for us and do me just a little bit of a favor and tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about this book?
Awesome. Thanks for introducing me, Kirsten. So my name is Reem, and this is my newest book called Amira's Picture Day. And it was actually supposed to be released, I think it was April 6th, and we got an email from the editor saying, wait, they're on a ship somewhere. It's going to come out on the 13th. So we just said, okay. But it's a really fun book for me, especially because it's about one of my favorite Muslim holidays called Eid. And a lot of people don't know this, but the Muslim holiday Eid we don't usually know when it takes place until the day before because Muslims follow the lunar calendar. So I used to be a second grade teacher, and I remember it would get very stressful not knowing which day I needed to call a substitute in. So similarly, I took this story and I made it for a second grader or a little girl who Eid just happens to fall on picture day. And she's really devastated because the thought of missing her class photo is too much because on Eid, Muslims typically go to the mosque to celebrate and have a party and for prayers. So what I really loved is the illustrator's name is Fahmida Zine. She did such a good job with the pictures. Like there's Amira and she's like so sad because if she's not in her class photo, no one's going to remember her. And she really did a great job putting humor in there. And another thing I really loved, I'll just show you another spread, was the diversity. She really pictured a lot of different Muslims at the mosque. She really nailed the sense of color that you might see at a mosque on Eid. People are usually wearing their finest clothes. There's a lot of good food. Like my 3-year-old and I love this spread. There's cookies everywhere. And even the cover is just so joyful. Like when my 3-year-old saw me take it out of the box, she was like, ah, there's candy. And then the illustrator said she did intentionally like throw in candy in lots of different places. So I think I'm hoping this book will be fun for people to whoever want to be in 2 places at once. And just for Muslims who might have a hard time explaining about what Eid is. So this will hopefully help explain. So thank you.
Thank you, Guy. I have to show one picture. The inside of the book is gorgeous.
Yeah.
I am a sucker for after you open up. I took off the dust jacket, but the inside and these designs for your hand. And what is it called?
It's called mehndi, which is the Urdu word for henna. So it is henna. I just use the Urdu word. Arabic word is henna. And when I was growing up, my aunt would actually draw a mermaid. I'm obsessed with mermaids. So she would draw a mermaid on my hand for Eid. And I was like so excited.
I love it. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Jessica. Can you talk a little bit about Daisy for us and yourself? I'm so sorry.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kirsten. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm super excited to share my latest book, Daisy. Here she is right here. I'm an author and an illustrator of picture books. I also illustrate for other writers, and so my experience kind of is like being in my world and then being in other people's worlds when I'm making my books, which is really fun. So yeah, a little bit about Daisy. Daisy is a little warthog we see here, and Daisy is essentially a character who feels a little bit different than the other kids at school, and they make her sort of like feel that at times. And so the idea, or not the idea, but what happens with Daisy is that instead of getting sort of caught up in the stress of, you know, feeling different all the time, she tries to block that out by throwing herself into things that she loves. So her favorite thing to do is to look around the forest floor to find little treasures and things that have been discarded. So she just kind of like loses herself in that. And I wanted to share just a couple pages just to show you. So here we see Daisy. So the kind of the opening, one of the opening pages that we see Daisy, she's sort of immersed in this field of flowers, a field of daisies, because she's named after her mama's favorite flower, which is a daisy. And so she doesn't usually feel like a daisy though, especially when she's going to school. So we see her sort of like hiding like behind the tree, and she's nervous about school. And then we see these couple pages in here where she is sort of being, you know, addressed by the other girls in a negative way. So one of the lines is, "You don't look like a daisy," said Rose. "More like a thistle," said Violet smugly. Hazel and all the rest of the girls laughed. Daisy put her head down. So we see her in the background of the schoolhouse, and she's feeling so like rejected and feeling bad. And then we see her sitting on the edge of a dock, and it says she put her head down a lot of the time. So it's a story that, really comes from a place of relation to me where I always felt very different than the other girls at school. I was always one of the or the only Black girl at school, and I just always felt so, not like as pretty as them, and the standard of beauty and the way that people, looked at me was very different. And so that was an element that I really connect to in Daisy, but I also connect to the positive side where I just found things that I love to do. And for me that was like, making stories and drawing pictures. And um Daisy, she keeps her little treasures in a little hidden secret fort that she has at home, or out like away from her home. And so she has her little private world, but inside of all that, not to spoil it, there is a kindred spirit that is among her a little bit. So it's a little bit sort of like about like me and what I put into Daisy, and a lot of the things that I did in preparing to do Daisy. I got really into doing some nature paintings, and so I was practicing a lot of little nature watercolor paintings, just to sort of like give myself this like feel like I was in a forest for many months before I even started to paint the book. So I did just lots and lots of these, and I did a lot of studies of Andrew Wyeth painting. So I was doing a lot of just kind of lots of drawings and things that really inspired me and inspired my process, so that when I sat down to actually make the book, it was just this I just was in love with the world that I had sort of created, and I sort of like lost myself inside of that. And so it was really fun to create. But Daisy's a special book to me because it is, so close to my experience from when I was a child. But the bigger thing about the story that I really like to tell people, that it's not a story about, mean girls and then they change because they see how awesome Daisy is. The story is just, it's just there's mean girls in there because there's just mean girls in life, and the story is not about changing them. It's about finding who you are and loving who you are, not worrying about what anybody else has to say, and trusting that you're going to find people that understand you and that get you and see you for who you are. And so that's really the story for me. So it's sort of my take on that universal story of feeling different, but it's definitely a story about just going with the things that you love in life, and making that your sort of place of resilience.
Well, and it comes across 100%. Your book is absolutely beautiful, and Daisy's beautiful in such an
Oh,
inward
thank
and
you.
outward way.
Thank
So,
you. Oh, and then
congratulations.
thank you so much. And then because you had mentioned the thing about the case cover, so like and like the what's behind when you open the page. So I love to show these. So these are the end papers for the book. So you can see there are these little closed up daisies in the very beginning, and then at the end papers in the back of the book, the daisies have all opened up because now that they can be seen by the world. And there's a secret treasure under the case. It's a little
It
hidden.
doesn't really show on the camera,
Yeah, it's
but
kind
that's
of
why
hard
you
to
have to
see.
get the
Yeah.
book.
Yeah, you should get the book so that you can see the magic of the underneath. So thanks, Kirsten.
Absolutely. It's so perfect. I love it, love it, love it. I have to apologize for those of you that don't know, I'm in Emmaus. And although I'm trying not to mute too much since I'm talking to everyone, we have trains here. So if you hear some really loud trains, it's right behind me and I'm trying to control it, but it is what it is. It's real. So, okay, next up, I'm going to ask Katey to talk a little bit about. Katey's actually, you're not local, but you're local enough that I get to see you every once in a while, which is awesome. So go ahead, Katey.
Thanks. And thanks for hosting this and all the work you've put into like just helping authors and illustrators and all of us creatives get out there in a time when we're in a lot. Personally, I'm a bit of a hermit to begin with. So this has really fed my hermiting habit. And it's nice to have something that helps me break out of that and get back out in the world where I'm interacting with people. So I'm Katey Howes. I'm currently in Eastern Pennsylvania, but I've lived all over the United States and briefly in Spain, and we could talk stories for ages. I'm a picture book author. It is my, I don't know, I say late in life career and then people laugh at me, but I was previously a physical therapist. I worked in schools and I worked in brain injury rehab and primarily in helping people get back into the community. So I've spent a lot of my life working with people who need to learn how to communicate to others what their needs are and what their wants are so that they get treated respectfully. And then also within my family and friends, I've had a lot of people in my life who have had to communicate what's okay for them and what's not okay for them, when sometimes that felt different than what society expected of them. So Rissy No Kissies is my latest book. It just came out March 2nd. Illustrators Jess Engel. And if you love to watch people paint in watercolors, I know sometimes you just like those process videos on Instagram will suck you in. Hers is YouTube, Studio Jess, and she's incredible. I could watch her paint all day long. She's amazing. And Rissy is a lovebird who doesn't like kisses, as you can tell from the very obvious title. Isn't it lucky it rhymed? And throughout the book, Rissy tells people she doesn't want kisses. You know, her grandma wants to give her a kiss. The neighbor who's visiting wants a little kiss from her. The friends at school get closer and closer to her every week and then are about to kiss her because they say that's what lovebirds do. And every time she says no, they come up with a different concern. Is Rissy sick? Is she rude? Is she confused? And Rissy starts to take all that to heart. Is she actually a lovebird if she doesn't show love the way the other ones do? If it makes her feel icky, if it makes her feel weird? And there's this beautiful illustration that just like breaks my heart. Like, who knew a little gumdrop shaped lovebird like this could break your heart? Oh my goodness. And it says, if I can't show love with kissies, then I'll never quite belong. And she just feels like she's not part of this whole family and friends and the people who care about her the most. And her mother reassures her, your body and your heart are yours, and you choose how to share. You get to pick the ways you want to show us that you care. And after that, she feels bolstered. She feels supported. She feels that she can speak up and use her voice like we all should be able to say, yes, I love you all, but I'll show it my own way. And it shows ways she does love to show affection, that she likes to make cards and cookies. And we see that there were hints of these all through the illustrations beforehand. These were the ways she was trying to show love. And the other people, the other birds, didn't really recognize that until she had that feeling that it was okay to speak up and speak out and accept those and share those. So she's got cards, she's got little worm cookies, she likes to cuddle and snuggle, and it gets better for her and for everyone around her because they recognize that we share love in different ways. So that book was so important to me to make for so many reasons. And I adore how well it came out. And I adore that my kids celebrate it with me. They made me Rissies. So this one is my little stuffy Rissy. And my youngest made me this little clay Rissy. And my oldest embroidered me a handkerchief with Rissy on it because she says when I read books, I cry too much. So Rissy is here to deal with me crying as I read my books out loud. So they share love in their own ways too. And I feel like it's a perfect example of that. So it's been really fun to celebrate this book. And then also, let me put a plug in, April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And books that talk about boundaries and autonomy and consent, and mine is not the only one out there right now. There's some fabulous ones. Publishers Weekly just did a list of them a couple days ago, and there's several more online. You know, there's just nothing more important than making sure that kids feel comfortable being their own self, just like Daisy, just like Amira, just like all of these books. So giving them messages that let them do that, to be themselves and love themselves for who they are, that's really important. All right, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to start crying.
It sure is. It sure is important. And Katey, you have me tearing, and it's just the thing, you know. I think that the empathy with which our picture books enable us to talk about problems, to talk about issues, to talk about things that may not be a problem for ourselves, but just need to express to someone else so they understand. It's just beautiful. And you're already lining up our theme for today without even, me having to say a word, which is wonderful. So before we move on to Aram, just one thing to tell everybody: if you do have questions, you're welcome to put them in the Q&A or the chat. Towards the end of our session, I'll be looking at those and bringing them up to the lovely panelists. So next up, let's go to Aram. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your new book.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So nice to be here. Thank you for having me. Oh my gosh, I'm just fascinated by these books. So I will talk about my book, but then I just want to say that like Reem, same thing happened to me. To my pub date got pushed like 2 weeks because the book shipping was being delayed. And I've seen a lot of those these days, actually. And when, right, yeah. And when Reem was saying that this is the book for anyone who wants to be in 2 different places at the same time, I am actually in the conference right now that's happening. It's like, I want to be in 2 different places right now. And I sort of am. And I think this virtual, events made it possible. So I am actually really grateful for that too. And also, so I am an author and illustrator, and I am also a book designer. And the thing like close daisy at the front end paper and open daisy at the back end paper, those just like melt my heart, because those end papers just add so much to the layer of the book that's so subtle but so beautiful. And I'm a huge fan of Daisy. I love the warhol with the daisy on her head. It's like, oh. And
Aram, you're supposed to be talking about your book. It's so sweet.
I am going
This
through,
book
but I'm
right
just
here.
so I do have it. I do have it. I but I'm just so excited. I know. But also like Katey's book, when I saw it, I was no, I'm not just going through everyone. I am very serious.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Yeah, like when I saw it, it's like I really do wish I had this book as a kid, because I think it just didn't even occur to me, even after I grew up, right? It just didn't even occur to me that like I own me fully, right? Because there's like so much societal expectation. And that's like such a sweet book to talk about such an important issue in such a great way, like such easy way, right?
Right.
Anyways, I'm very honored to be part of this amazing panel. My book is very lighthearted. It's called Sunday Funday in Koreatown. It's the 3rd book featuring Yumi. So since this is the 3rd book, actually the publisher gave a series name, Yumi Friends and Family. So yeah, it has the No Kimchi for Me and Let's Go to Taekwondo that came out last year, and this is the 3rd one. And in this book, Yumi has a routine of her favorite day of Sunday Funday, where she wakes up to watch her favorite TV show, like makes breakfast with dad and goes to Koreatown to have fun. But then somehow everything doesn't go her way. Like her favorite outfit is in the laundry, the ingredient for her breakfast is like out, like her TV show is canceled. So she's just going through these small disappointments, but then learns that there is always an alternative. And as long as she keeps an open mind, she can still enjoy her day. It is actually inspired by one of my very favorite childhood memories of going for a long walk with my dad, because Sunday was the only day I was able to spend a long time with my dad. When I was a kid, we had like 6 work days a week in Korea, where I grew up. So Sunday was the day I would spend with my dad. So that was inspired by that. And also Koreatown element came in later, because this Yumi Friends and Family series is focused on, or it mixes in the Korean elements very as an essential part of it. And so we decided to put the Koreatown element, and I had so much fun drawing Koreatown. And I was thinking of the time when I moved to New York for the first time in 2006, before smartphone. And I didn't know that even Koreatown, a thing called the Koreatown existed. And I was just walking around the city and I just stumbled upon it. And it just blew my mind because all of a sudden, in this foreign country, foreign city, I didn't expect to see all these Korean signs, Korean stores, and all of a sudden this whole block is filled with Korean restaurants, Korean bookstores, Korean hair salons. And so that was just an amazing memory for me as an adult. So I combined them both. So it does feel very special to me, with all my favorite memories from my childhood and adulthood. So yeah, that's my Sunday fun day in Koreatown.
I love Sunday Funday. It's so it's very colorful and incredibly joyous. Like what I love about it is that it's so real. It's like things happen every single day that are disappointing, and we still can be happy, and we can still get through it, and we can still have people around us that we love each other, and that it's okay even when it doesn't go right, because the reality is anybody's day always right? I mean, the reality is it's almost always not right? And it's wonderful for our children, particularly when they're really trying to figure out who they are, that just because this didn't happen the way I wanted it to, I can still be okay, and I can still function really well and have a great time. And sometimes the special things happen when something goes wrong, right? Sometimes that's even the best. So it's just wonderful. Yay. Congratulations to all of you. What I didn't share in the beginning is that all of you have a really great resume, and your books have been acknowledged by people in the industry and readers, and with awards and accolades. So these books are all none of them are your first books, right? You've all had at least one, if not more, lots more actually. We have a stack of backlist here, which is wonderful. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the first book that you published, and anything that relates to, was it difficult? Was it what you expected? Did you try to self-publish yourself, or did you have an agent? What was your process like? And for this one, I'll get started with Jessica, if that's okay. I'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. So my first book, it was an interesting experience because I had been trying on my own to get published for like 9 years, and I was like submitting books, and I think looking back, I made a lot of, I would say, like rookie mistakes. I did probably every rookie mistake that there was. And also, like, the bigger part of it is I just don't think I really understood the kind of stories I wanted to tell. So it took me that long to really kind of like find my writing voice and my visual voice. When I finally started to like find those things, everything started to gel. And that was right around the time that I started to really be finally active in the organization Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, SCBWI. So I had been a member, but I didn't even like know how to like what that meant. And so I finally started to go to conferences and do things and participate in those sort of things. And I started to learn more about the industry. So I went to a conference in New York. I sort of like bit the bullet and invested, and was like, I'm gonna try this now because I feel like I finally have like some things like in place that I feel like could do something. So I went to a conference in New York, and I went to a workshop where my agent had she was giving a talk, and she had just left being an editor at Simon and Schuster. So she had been an agent for 1 month, and she was looking to build her list. And I was like, she's definitely somebody I should submit to. So after the conference, you can submit to the people that, that are there presenting. I submitted to her, and within I think it was like she was on vacation, but like a couple of months, like we connected and she offered me representation. And within like 2 months of working with her, I got a 2-book deal with Neil Porter. So it seemed like, oh, it happened so fast, but it was like plus like 9 years prior. So it was long and then very rapid, but that was kind of my process to getting my first book published.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I have to give a shout out to a local artist that we know here, Tara, who actually brought your books to my attention a few years ago after she had met you at one of the conferences. So yeah,
Yay!
so yay, it's
Awesome.
full
Yes,
circle.
SCBWI, that's like my, yeah, like I wouldn't be here probably without them. Like they really helped me figure things out and put me in, help me put myself in the right place. So yeah,
that's wonderful. And it shows that you acknowledge that this is an industry. It is a business. It's not a hobby. What you're doing is really important and it takes a lot of work.
exactly. Yeah. And I think that that's something that people that like they want to make picture books, like I love anybody. I never would ever discourage anybody, but this is something that, you know, I worked very, very hard at. And then even finally getting published, I still had to have a day job for many years. And so like doing like the night shift making books and on the weekends, it's a lot of work, but a labor of love if that's what you want. So
makes sense. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Katey, how about you? Can you talk to us a little bit about your experience?
So I started writing with the idea that I might get something published right around 2013 or 2014. So it's been a quicker journey for me. I've always written primarily poetry. And I always thought someday, you know, when I retire, I'll write. And in my mind, it was going to be a book for adults, probably. And when my children were little, I stayed home for a while because I had 3 kids under 5 and my job was very physically and emotionally just tough. And I just found that I couldn't do it all. That even though I thought I was Superwoman, I couldn't be Superwoman. So I started telling my kids stories because I found it was my best way to keep them out of trouble and to stay related to them and to be able to lie down on the floor for a while and not have to move around. I could just talk and they wouldn't get in trouble and I could kind of rest. So over time, they started telling me that I should share my stories with other people. And this is one of those things I tell kids at school visits. I love to tell them that, you know, I tell my kids they have to share their talents. And then my kids say, you have to share your talents. And I tell my kids, no, it's going to be too hard. And they go, no, you told us we have to try hard things. And so my kids turned me into a writer. They gave me the courage and the encouragement to say, let me send some stories out there. The stories I first sent out there were terrible. Not that they were bad stories to like tell to your kids while you're lying on the rug covered in Legos, but they were not stories that would fit the format that publishing was picking up at the time. So I had a lot of learning to do. SCBWI conferences definitely helped me with that. Some of the online groups that I was able to connect with through Facebook, the Kidlit 411 page and the Subbit Club page helped me kind of get the idea of, you know, what was an agent for? And how did you get stuff into people's hands? And what were people looking for in a manuscript? And even how did you format it? Like stuff I just didn't know. So I did make the rookie mistakes too. I sent out things that weren't really ready. I sent out things in formats that probably weren't the typical format or the accepted format. But I got a very lucky sort of moment where I sent the manuscript for Grandmother Thorn to a small press called Ripple Grove Press. They were based in Portland, Oregon at the time. Now they're in Connecticut. They move. And they loved the story. They loved that I wasn't trying to pretend that kids can't feel deep feelings or think deep thoughts. I really respect that kids have more to them than we seem to think on the surface, and that if you give them a chance, they will be able to have deep discussions with you about their emotions, about life. Kids are amazing. So we partnered together to make that first book. And shortly thereafter, I got my agent with other manuscripts and we've done other things together. But that first experience was really exciting and really scary. And I really knew nothing about what I was doing. And I'm glad it's gone as well as it has. That book, the illustrator made everything in multimedia collage. It took her ages, but it's gorgeous. There's pages where she's sewn together papers, and like pieces of paper that her grandfather had composed music on are in this book. Like there's so much memory and heart and feeling in the book. So it's always going to be a treasure to me, even though it's never going to sell a ton of copies. And that doesn't matter to me. It's what made me realize that this is what I wanted to do with my life now.
It's beautiful. We
It
love
is.
this book so much.
So gorgeous. I'm crying again. You guys, this is just
No.
I do it all the time.
Katey, that's why we're like totally with each other, because crying works. It's okay. It took me till age 46 or so to be like, I'm totally okay being a crier. So it's a thing. And I have to say, you even mentioned it, that maybe it's not going to sell the most books, but it's a steady seller. It's the kind of book that once we've touched, once librarians and teachers and booksellers see special books, they remain and they don't go away. They are backlist and they are in the shops, and we get to talk about them because they're special, and they're not the books that are going to be on the Target 10 books only kind of thing. And that's why you buy books at bookstores and not at Target. Just a plug there. Anyway, okay, so it's a beautiful book.
So much, because really that was the book that I needed to write for myself at the time. I mean, Grandmother Thorne realizes that she can't control everything, no matter how much she wants to, and that you need to lean on your friends. And I needed that at the time when I was trying to be the mom who did everything. So it's great that it still connects to people. Yeah. You make me happy.
It weaves.
Booksellers make me happy.
Wonderful. Reem, how about we ask you, how are things going? How did things happen for you?
Yes, hi. So mine is a little similar to Jessica and Katie's in that it took time. I used to teach second grade. So every day, my favorite part of the day was when I took out a book and we would read it, and the whole class would get really calm. So when I stopped teaching and I had my first daughter, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a picture book author and it's going to happen ASAP. Did not. And it was back in 2010 when we had to print out manuscripts and mail them to the publisher with a self-addressed return envelope. And I remember thinking like I was going to get the call or the email, and I didn't get it. Instead, I got all these rejections back in my mail. It was so depressing. I would open my mail and there would be my manuscript come back. And I was like, So now looking back, I would say probably my mistakes were trying to match what was already out there. Like I was sort of writing stories that maybe they might have already been in a very saturated market. Like I was writing, cutesy stories that were already there. And then I remember my father always told me when we were growing up, write about something that makes you different. And I was an immigrant when I was a 13-year-old. And I remember that feeling of moving and how, it was really hard moving, it was hard moving from different continents. You know how Aram was saying she walked and she saw Koreatown, and I was like relating all those sights and sounds of home come back to you. So I think when I moved continents, I really missed home. And another thing was I thought about writing about Ramadan, which is a month where Muslims fast. And I read so many books about Ramadan, picture books, and I reviewed a lot of them. And I noticed that I didn't notice any none of them took place in school. And as a teacher, there's so much of your life is spent in school. Like kids would call me mom and grandma by accident. There's like, you're like living in school for so much of the time. So I wrote this book called Lailah's Lunchbox about a little girl who, it's funny, there's no real lunch in there. So it's about a girl who leaves her lunch at home. But it was funny, one of my reviews was that there was no lunch, and the person was disappointed. And I'm like, it's about Ramadan. So they're hanging their lunchbox up, but there is really good breakfast and really good dinner. And it's sort of about this girl who's too nervous to tell her teacher, hey, I don't have my lunchbox today. And this is the real reason why. So that's the book. And it's really cool. Like almost every Ramadan, I'll have like moms take pictures of their kids and post them on social media of their kid with the book instead of a lunchbox, which is really sweet. And I submitted it without an agent. You know, I was like brand new. Even though I'd been working for a few years, sort of like Katey, I had my first daughter and nothing happened. I just got rejections. Then by the time my second daughter came, I thought, you know, let me try again. By this time, it'd been like 5 years and I had two little kids. So you're already, you know, kind of like Jessica, you have a day job and a night job, you're already maxed out. But I sent them to publishers and agents, and the publisher actually responded first. It was Tilbury House Publishers, and they really liked it. And then it was funny, a few weeks later, an agent responded, and I was like, oh, I already got signed. So that was really fun. So yeah, I think that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Aram, I think you're next. Tell us a little bit about publishing for you.
Sure. So I found my editor through SCBWI as well. And yeah, it was a long process in a way that like everyone else, I have been writing and drawing. I have been trying to submit or trying to publish, but it was just taking a long time because I didn't know how. So I act like when I do like school visits and things, I show this photo that I took in 2009 with my desk filled with like the papers, and one of them is a book called The Dream Weaver. I I know young kids don't know it at all. Some of you might know. So Dreamweaver is the software that you use to build your own website. So I mean, no one does it now, but I was building my portfolio website at the time to send to the publisher. I had this book called Children's Writers. I forgot the name, the Marketplace, where they compile all the publisher information into a book and they publish every year. So I had 2009 edition because I was 2009 at the time. And yeah, nothing really happened up until 2015. So that was a long process. And I saw some of you were asking in the chat, like, what was that mistake that you were talking about? One of my mistakes that I made at the time that got me take so long to actually get it published is that I don't think I did the right research of whom to submit to, because I do have a list of people I submitted my manuscript and drawings at the time. And after spending many years now in the industry, now if I look at the list again, I see all these names that I will never submit now, because now I understand what kind of books certain editor publish and what kind of books certain publishers more like leaning towards too. But then at the beginning, I would just submit it to everyone. You know, I just wanted, I just thought everyone would like it. But if I think about it now, people have their own taste. Like people love certain books. And so that was that mistake I made. But in 2015, I met my editor in one of a small regional SCBWI conferences. And I was not actually going to submit to her, but then she presented what kind of book she liked at the very last day of the conference. And I thought, oh, maybe she would like my book, because she was talking about very simple storyline that is really clear to children. And my story is very simple. The book I submitted was Cat on the Bus. So this was my debut picture book. It was actually a word list. It was just the pictures, but then at the end, we decided to put in like a very minimal amount of text. And yeah, it was inspired by this photo that I saw online years ago. It was a photo of a stray cat on a bus seat in South Korea, actually. It was a really cold winter day, and the bus driver felt bad for the cat to be outside, so he let the cat on the bus. And I just thought that it was such a sweet story, so heartwarming, where people just wanted to share that warmth of inside with the animal who didn't have a home. So that became the story. And I, you know, because it of course, is really special because it's my first book. But I didn't know what to do at all at the time when the book came out. I didn't go to any book festivals. I mean, I didn't know what to do. I didn't like even have a social media. I had just made it so that I can start putting up something, but I didn't know how to use it. But yeah, it was a very long process. And as many of you said, I think it's very, like, a lot of picture books look deceptively simple. So it gives a wrong idea to people that it is not too hard to make it. But because it is so simple, it is so hard. And actually, like, I started working in publishing industry because I wanted to see what's going on behind the curtain. And I actually didn't expect that to be my career path, but I already have been working in publishing house for many, many years now. And I love it because I get to work with these amazing illustrators, and it is really inspiring, and I learned so much. So yeah, that's my story.
That's wonderful. Yay. And I love Cat on the Bus, I have to say. I mean, it's wonderful. And I get a little giddy talking to the four of you, especially because I do personally love your books. It's not just trying to say, hey, this is a product, because books aren't products, even though they are. They connect, they resonate. One of the social media discussions we had last night was how you have to play such different roles as authors and as illustrators, and you have to be people online. And the reality is, what you want to do is write great books and connect one-on-one with people, because that's your gift, right? And I mentioned that a picture book changed the complete trajectory of my life. And I won't waste our time here, but I'm not the only one. I've met a number of people that a picture book really can speak to you at a time and a place that you just need it. And I don't mean to be sexist and say mostly it's women, because it's not. We have so many wonderful men that are caring for their children at home, while women may be in the workplace or single parents. But picture books allow us to have conversations that maybe we don't have the right words for. And it doesn't have to, it's not a textbook. And that's really what happened here. Was we were working with Holiday House publishers on putting this panel together. And once we had Jessica and Reem and Aram, because you're all under Holiday House, I reached out to Katey and Lerner and said, I need to pull you in here, because these 4 books are my go-tos this spring and after that, because we have readers that need to connect in the joyous, wonderful world of mistakes and humanity that we share, right? And I'm going off track, but last night was a great conversation about social media, and I was going to pull that into our talk today, but time is flying. So I'm going to ask another question. Are there any, I think the term is like an Easter egg. Like, do you guys have anything in your books? And if you don't, that's okay. That the reader for the first time might not see on their own, and you want to tell us about? Anybody? Oh, I'm seeing Reem is shaking your head. Reem, do you have something?
I do, but I also really wanted to know which book changed your life. Like, I'm
Oh
really
gosh, it's going to be
interested.
so silly. It's called The Bugabees, and it's a book about food allergies. And
That's good. I just was curious.
thank you.
So I told the illustrator, each time I read this book, I find something that I didn't see before. Like, my kids just pointed out, this is a henna cone, like for Mandy, and I didn't notice that. Also, something fun that she's done is there's so much humor on every page. Like, the first time I sort of went through it, I didn't notice, but let me show you one thing. So, like, when you read this book, there's almost like a punk type character with a scarf, like a hijab, which was really fun. So Fahmida put in a lot of details, like a cookie trail, almost like Tom and Jerry when you smell something good. Oh, and I really love these two little characters who I didn't write about, but for me to put them in, I think a lollipop stealer. So there's a lot of really funny details that are in here that I think when I read the book the first time, I missed them. But then when I read it the second time, I was like, oh, this character looks really funny. Oh, there's a story going on there. So, and I'm still finding stuff. So I hope when you see it, you'll understand what I mean.
I do. I've read it, seen it a couple times. I totally get that. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thanks.
And that's the most wonderful thing about almost all picture books, right? That you find things, there's layers. And you as writers, like I'm not sure who, I can't remember who said it, that these are hard. Writing a good book, writing a good children's book is not easy. And illustrating a good children's book is not easy. So yay you. Jessica, did you have something?
Yeah. So I always put little things in my books that are personal to me. So one of the first things is this red teapot. This is our teapot that we have at home, and it's appeared in many of my books. Like as soon as we got it, it's like this little thing. I have a book that I am upcoming that's illustrating, and I put the teapot in there, but because of the other colors on the page, I couldn't make it red, and I was like, oh! So, but it's still there in essence. The other thing, kind of like the bigger thing though, is that there's actually only all female characters in my book. They're all female. It's so
I
all
didn't
of the
catch
all
that.
yeah, it's
Sorry.
it's subtle, and it might not be something that like you would even realize, but there's a scene where the schoolhouse, and the names on their slates are all female names. They're all actually flowers, so all of the females, they're all female and flower names. And so that was my intention, and you wouldn't necessarily know that, but I did that because it was that underlying sort of that mean girl like thing that that you experience when you're younger. And even Daisy has these little sisters in the story, and they just appear in a few spots, but there's a scene where she's sleeping at night with them, and their names are all carved into their headboard, and they're all flower names also, except one character. There's only one character that doesn't have a flower name. So those are like my favorite. Those are my favorite. And also my son's stuffed animal, his favorite stuffed animal is hidden in there. I'll just let you find that. I won't show you. Those are
You're
some
not
of the
going to be
Easter
able to
eggs.
see this, but because we can't have you guys here in person to sign books, Jessica sent us there you go. Can you see it? Can you see Daisy?
Yeah.
Look at that. And you did all of them like that. I'm so appreciative. Everybody's gonna love that.
Very fun. Yes, if you want a hand-drawn little warthog.
Yay. Aram, Katey, do you have something?
I just want a warthog. I'm gonna order a book.
We all want a warthog, right?
We all want a warthog.
I can hook you up with warthogs.
No, as far as the Easter eggs go, I love to search for them. So I loved seeing those in there. There's not as many in Rissy No Kissies, but in this one, Be a Maker, I just want to mention that Elizabeth Vukovich, she put in spiders, and I don't know if you can see it right here on the top of the word maker. It's all about the different ways we can make things, the different things we can make in the world. And she said she was inspired that the spider was like her favorite maker, nature's best maker, because it has everything it needs all by itself to make what it needs to make the world beautiful, but also to supply itself with food and things like that. And so she snuck spiders into almost every illustration in this book, which is great when I go to schools and I project it really big up on the screen. And then I'll be like, okay, kids, keep your lips zipped. But if you see the spider, do the spider hand in front of you, and I can look out at the crowd. And I can even do it now in video visits. I can be like, spider hands if you see the spider in this illustration. And it really gets the kids who might not always be engaged with everything about the book to at least be doing a seek and find kind of thing on the pages. And it works really well with like audiences of various ages, but also there's just that feeling that that spider is our friend all the way through the book. And at the very end, there's 2 of them. And I'm like, oh, they made friends just like the main character made friends in the book. It's so sweet. I love these extra things.
Oh, I do too. That's lovely. And you know, one of the things as a bookstore owner, I love when I don't know them. I've read the book, and a kid will come and tell me, Miss Kirsten, did you see? And I'll be like, I didn't know that was in there. And it's just it's the best. There's nothing better. Aram, do you have anything hidden that you want to tell us about?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I actually did have a lot of fun putting in a lot of things, but then I just want to share maybe 2 things because something really great happened because of this Easter egg. There is a scene later where Yumi unites with Grandma, where Grandma was having a book club in the neighbor's house. And the book she was reading with the neighbor is actually called All You Can Ever Know. And it is a memoir of Nicole Chung of interracial adoption story that I read a few years ago that just blew my mind. And I just like suddenly included because that just book was so, it just like doesn't leave my head at all. And then she found it out and I actually got a signed copy from her. She mailed. So it's just a great connection that I made, just like putting in this tribute to don't cry, Kirsten. Yeah,
I always cry, I told you.
yeah, so it was the tribute I made to the book, which the author found it out and sent me the signed copy of the book. And it just, it just was so made me so happy. So that's one thing. And another thing is that for anyone who read any of my previous book of Yumi series, so in Let's Go to Taekwondo, there is a Master Cho who's a rabbit. And then she actually cameos here in a supermarket scene in Koreatown. And you can see like the black belt is coming out of her back. So it's very subtle. And I feel like not many kids would notice it because in my Let's Go to Taekwondo, Master Cho never, we cannot tell the gender of the rabbit. So, and I think a lot of us just assume that Taekwondo master would be a man, but then she's wearing a dress here. But then, yeah, so that is another very subtle Easter egg I included. Yeah, and there are actually a lot more, especially I hope the kids would find out the book covers that I included here and there, but yeah.
That's awesome. You had me tearing up, which isn't fine. I love it. I love it. Well, you touched on something that, one of the keys that we always talk about, and especially in this industry, we know that kids want to see themselves in a book, but we also need to have kids see other kids in books, right? And whether or not we're all female and we're really rocking it, or we're gender neutral, or anything at all, we want everybody to see each other and to realize that we're all equal and that we can love each other, and the differences are what make us beautiful, and your books do that. And I'm not going to apologize for tearing up because it's important, and you make a difference in children's lives. I wouldn't have a bookstore and I mean this sincerely, I would not have a bookstore if I didn't find a picture book that connected me with my daughter to help keep her safe. Because picture books are probably the most unique thing in the world to connect us to others without feeling pressure. I don't have to lecture anyone. I can just read a picture book, and people can come to the understanding of whatever the objective of the story may be in their own time. It may be immediately, it may be after they've read it 3 times, it may be 5 years after they were exposed to that book. But through the stories that you tell, people are living better lives. So thank you. And our time is like almost gone. Oh, okay. So last question. And we'll be really quick because I promised everybody very close to 11, we would wrap up. Let's start with you, Reem. Can you tell us what you're working on now? Are you working on anything? Tell us about your next project.
Yes, so I love picture books, but I do have a middle grade book, and this is a novel in verse. I know I feel like I'm cheating on picture books, but it is a novel in verse. So to me, it's almost kind of like a picture book because there are less words. And this comes out on May 11th. So that's exciting. And then I've been working more with middle grade now. I love middle grade, but I'm also still working in picture books. So 2 in 1 go.
That's wonderful. Congratulations. Can't wait for that.
Thank you.
Jessica, how about you?
I'll actually, I did the good thing. So I brought it. So this is my next picture book that I illustrated for this awesome author, Seth Fishman. He writes a lot of nonfiction picture books. So this is his first fiction picture book. And this is, it's kind of like a fun sort of almost like a concept book in a sense. Like it's very literary, but you can also sort of basically travel through the story in 4 different storylines. So you have this character wake up and it's all about the different things that they could do during the day. And so each one of the kids on the cover sort of represents, and I'll just show you one quick picture. So the stories, so there's different stories. So you could in theory read the book all the way through, or you could even read it just like one color story at a time. And this is a really fun, amazing book to stretch my sort of like creative, imagination on. And it was just really fun to get to do. And I'm also illustrating for some other folks for books that they've written that I don't know if I can say yet, so I just won't. And I'm also doing some more extensive writing. I'll just say that it might fall outside of the picture book world, but I can't say anything more. So we'll see.
You can't do that to us.
And Kirsten, thank you for making us cry, but also for helping put our books in the hands of people that need them. I just had to say that. You mean a lot to us.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yay. Thank you so much. Katey, how about you? Are you working on anything besides, being a parent to 3 children?
Yeah, well, they're pretty independent these days. They ignore me and log into school. So I wish I had something to show right now. I have 2 books coming in 2022. One is called Woven of the World. It's illustrated by Dinara Mirtapolova, who is an Uzbek folk artist. She is outstanding. I love her. And it's with Chronicle Picture Books. It is sort of a metaphor about how we're each a tapestry woven of our ancestors and the people who came before us, but at the same time it's a survey of like weaving traditions from around the world throughout history, because weaving textile crafts are like one of the earliest forms of art that occurred in many different cultures around the world. And so I kind of got fascinated and I went down a rabbit hole learning about weaving just because I go down rabbit holes, and it turned into this beautiful metaphor. And I feel super lucky to be able to be actually making that into a book. I felt like maybe I was crazy and that nobody was going to connect to it the way I did, but I'll tell you, it connected fast. So that was fabulous. And then I have another one coming next year. God, 2022 is next year, you guys. Jeez. And it's called A Poem Grows Inside You. And it is about the way that a seed of an idea can kind of sit dormant inside you until just the right moment hits, or the right rhythm maybe, or meter, and suddenly it begins to grow. And that poem can live inside you and put roots down through you and make you strong. And how it's scary to let it out into the light. And you have that moment where you don't want to let anyone else see it. But when you let it out, it's outstanding. It grows, it blooms, it's beautiful. So it's kind of about me being scared to admit I'm a poet, but also to relate to children who say, can I write poetry? can I share my poetry with others? Can I take my ideas and share them with the world? So I'm very excited for that. It's illustrated by Heather Brockman-Lee, who does beautiful botanical and fantastical art. And we'll have 2 books of her own coming out next year as her debut year. And it's by the Innovation Press is the publisher, who I love.
Love Innovation Press. They do such wonderful books. Oh my goodness. Well, okay, you guys are like rocking it. We're gonna have a fantastic 2022 at this point. I love it, love it. Aram, do you have anything in the works?
I do. I do actually have something coming out next year as well, 2022. I have sketches that I'm working on. So its working title is Tomorrow is Seollal. Seollal is Korean Lunar New Year's Day. So Lunar New Year's Day is celebrated by many, many people from different cultures, especially a lot of Asian cultures. And I wanted to do it because I think like many times it's also called the Chinese New Year in the United States. But it is also celebrated by people from different countries on the same day. And the Korean name for it is Seollal. And it is actually taking place in school. And I'm so glad that when Reem pointed out that, yeah, the kids like spend so much time in school. And I did want that experience of the kids sharing their culture in school, which I see a lot. They do like, you know, like come and do show and tell of the holidays when it comes along. So it is about the little girl and her family coming to the school to share like Seollal, like Lunar New Year in Korea with the classmates and teachers. So yeah, that's what I'm working on right now, which I'm a little late, but I will make that happen, I think.
That's awesome. Congratulations to all of you. The amount of work of publishing a book during COVID, but also creating new art during this time has got to be challenging. I can't imagine. And I'm one of the fortunate ones that just gets to receive and view all the beautiful work that you guys do. So thank you. And having said that, I want to mention a couple people in the chat have asked for some information based on the books that you've mentioned and other works that you've mentioned. And so just to tell everybody, anyone that has is on this call will receive a follow-up email that will have all the good stuff and links and all sorts of good stuff. So you don't have to follow anything. You don't have to write anything down from the chat. And with that, I guess I should probably wrap this up with big thanks. Everybody's book is available for purchase anywhere in the country. We do actually have 2 people that are visiting us from Texas and Oregon, it looks like. So that's kind of awesome. And if you don't already know that you can purchase books on bookshop.org, which is a online version of other nameless places that support independent bookstores, and it's really kind of wonderful. And obviously, if you have a local independent bookstore near you, please purchase their books there. And if you don't have any kids, you can buy a book and donate it to the local library or your children's library, because the picture books really play a role in the development of our kids. And librarians and teachers, we've mentioned teachers how many times on this call? They're often buying their own books for their own libraries, right? So you can always give a picture book to a teacher and it's going to be appreciated. So anyway, I had to do a little plug for buying the books. So Reem, Jessica, Katey, Aram, thank you so much for this great morning session. I really appreciate it. And I hope to see all of you in person in 2022 in some way, shape, or form.
Yay. Thank you, Kirsten.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. This has been
so
great.
much.
It's
Thank
so good to meet and see you all.
I can't wait to get everybody's books. I'm so excited.
Hey, you guys are the best. Everybody have a great weekend. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.